Meanwhile, there are growing calls for a former Obama advisor to testify on Capitol Hill. Former National Security Advisor Susan Rice could face questions about why she was asked to reveal the names of Americans mentioned in intelligence briefs.
In an interview yesterday, Rice aggressively denied allegations that she used intelligence about President Trump and his associates for political purposes.
There were occasions when I would receive a report in which a U.S. person was referred to, name not provided, just U.S. person. And sometimes in that context, in order to understand the importance of the report and assess its significance, it was necessary to find out or request the information as to who that U.S. official was.
Katie Glueck is a senior political correspondent for McClatchy, and she joins us now from Washington. So, Katie, in talking to your sources on Capitol Hill, just how strong is the appetite from lawmakers to hear Susan Rice testify under oath about these surveillance practices?
Hey, well, great to be with you. Certainly, we are hearing loud and growing calls for, at a minimum, having Congress look into these new revelations. And certainly, you are hearing from a number of Republicans that they would like to see her testify under oath as well. What I think has been notable here is that a number of Republicans who sometimes are more open to being critical of President Trump, Lindsey Graham, for example, have now also come out and said that they want to see scrutiny on this issue as well. Of course, there was also a Wall Street Journal editorial offering a similar position, saying, hey, you know, a lot of people have looked into all of the issues surrounding President Trump as it relates to Russia and what the intelligence community is finding there. The American people, this editorial says, need to know what role, if any, Obama administration officials were playing here, too.
Okay, so we have to talk about some major foreign policy challenges that are everybody's discussing. We're going to start with North Korea, though, and its latest ballistic missile test. This, of course, is coming just as the president is about to meet with the Chinese president. And the topic of North Korea was expected to dominate those talks anyway. But now we have this provocation. So what sort of impact do you think it may have on the talks?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Certainly, this was always expected to be a driving issue in these meetings, and now it looms over it even more significantly. And of course, the question is, how far is the White House going to go in pressuring China to step up a little bit more in efforts to rein in North Korea? Certainly, we've seen President Trump and others in his administration call for China to ramp up those efforts. You know, we're seeing senior administration officials say all options are on the table as it relates to North Korea. So, you know, we've heard lots of tough talk from the administration in the past. How much do they communicate that in this meeting this weekend?
All right, Katie, let's talk about some foreign policy now. The White House is pinning yesterday's chemical attack in Syria on what it calls the weakness of the previous administration. But as we look ahead now, what options are on the table with regards to the violence in Syria moving forward? I mean, it's easy to look back and say we could have done this differently or we could have done that differently. But what are some of the specifics that the Trump administration is looking to do other than looking inward to the United States?
Sure. Well, there are a lot of Republicans out there who come from the more hawkish wing of the party who would like to see the Trump administration continuing to call for regime change. So, but, you know, what's interesting here is that the Trump administration has actually backed away for calling from that. They've suggested it's not realistic anymore to suggest that regime change coming from the U.S. is possible as it relates to Bashar Assad. And so they've sort of walked that back a little bit, much to the disappointment of lawmakers, really some on both sides of the aisle, who do want to see the administration continuing to take that tougher approach. Now, we have seen folks around the administration, you know, calling on Russia, on Iran to step up the pressure on Assad. But, you know, I think in contrast to, like I said, members of even President Trump's own party, there seems to be less appetite for now in actually putting on that pressure from the United States. And you know, whether that changes in light of this attack, I think is something important to watch.
Let's talk about domestic policy now and the attempt to revive the Republican push to replace Obamacare. There's a new Gallup poll out now that shows that for the first time, the majority of Americans actually approve of the Affordable Care Act. And I think Donald Trump sort of dismissed this when we were talking about a previous poll, and he sort of said, oh, you know what it is? It's that they know Obamacare is going away, so people feel nostalgic about it.
Right.
He didn't use the word as nostalgic, but he sort of dismissed it as people are liking things when they know they're on their way out. But I don't think you can really ignore some of these poll numbers. So what sort of impact do you think it may have on the GOP's effort to put together a plan that is completely new and different and can replace Obamacare?
So this has been a very complicated issue for the Republican Party, as they just found out, last month in what was a pretty disastrous attempt to repeal and replace Obamacare that couldn't even get to a vote because there was not enough consensus within the Republican Party, much less bipartisan consensus or support from the American people. So we are now hearing, of course, about new conversations about what a proposal going forward might look like. But certainly that poll underscores just how politically risky this could potentially be, depending on what they come up with and how they sell it. And going back to that question of whether they're going to be able to get Republican consensus on this issue, much less bipartisan consensus, in a way that would then allow them to sell this to the American people. So certainly one of the hottest button political issues Republicans are dealing with right now, and of course they're dealing with a lot of them.
Yeah, especially if more and more people are liking Obamacare
right.
and want it to stay,
yes.
sort of. How are they going to develop a plan that's kind of Obamacare, but not,
right.
and cheaper, and all these other elements?
Yeah, and certainly
right.
those declining poll numbers mean for members of the GOP who might be still lukewarm about working on some issues with the president, like health care, this provides them a little bit of cover.
Totally.
At the same time, certainly some of them are kind of in a bind because many of them have run for years on promises to their Republican
right.
base to repeal Obamacare. So, squaring that with what we are seeing in terms of broader public opinion certainly makes that even more challenging.
Katie Glueck of McClatchy, we appreciate the time today, as always. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Great to be with you.